Want to see the main difference between Christian and myself? This is me, and this is Christian. I also feel very revealed. This is just too much for me, huh? What is up, guys? My name is Michael, and officially allowed to make videos for Theo and Harris right now. If you don't know me, I'm usually the editor, so I'm usually watching Christian and Anna, but now people will be watching me, and I'll be watching myself editing. Anyways, before we move on, I am wearing a Cartier Santos, not Dumont, and this is probably my favorite watch of all time. I've had 3 or 4, always sold them, flipped them, or something like that. But I think this is one I'm gonna keep. It has a cool bracelet, not the normal bracelet. I don't know which one I like better, but I love it. Anyways, okay, I'm gonna review a Movement Automatic watch. Please don't hate me in the comments because I'm reviewing a Movement brand watch and not being bashful on it. The one thing I wanna do before I even start this video is call upon the audience that watches this video that are die-hard watch fans. And I wanna ask you guys to comment down below a watch that you think is a better watch or your favorite watch for $300 or lower. Doesn't have to be automatic, can be quartz, can be any size that you want, men's or ladies, anything, a watch under $300 or $300, max I'd say $325 new, and just say why you like it or what it looks like, because I think the people that are going to watch this video or seek it out that aren't diehard watch fam members already are going to be people that are looking to get an automatic watch or Movement watch, and I feel like it's nice to just be able to scroll down and be like, oh, maybe I'll check out an SKX because they're also dope watches and better than the Movement watch. Alright, on with the review, and I'm actually going to do a very small review of this watch before we talk about some inner workings and thoughts. This watch is 41 millimeters, which in terms of a vintage watch is huge, but for a contemporary watch, it's a pretty decent size. Not too big, not too small. I like 38 and below, and I have a 6.5, 6.8 inch wrist. Sometimes it's bigger than others, so she said. And this is a size that's not gonna look like a tank on anyone's wrist, but it's also not gonna look like a tiny little thing on anyone's wrist. It's a really good all-purpose size watch. Besides that, pretty simple design, almost Bauhaus. We have some nice finishing. We have a polished, unpolished kind of combination going on here, with also some sandblasted metal on the back, which I think looks really nice. The movement of this Movement watch is a Miyota brand movement, which is not made by Movement, but it is still a good movement. It's a workhorse movement, pretty simple, no frills, although the case back actually looks pretty nice for a $300 watch. There is some polishing that you'll see. The rotor is hollowed out, and I wouldn't say it looks bad. I think you'd have to go up in price to get a better looking see-through case back, but if there's a different watch that has a better one, let me know. It all really depends on what you want to see. I know the Seagull chronographs have a pretty nice looking case back, but I know also the screws are just painted blue and aren't actually blue, but maybe at that price it doesn't matter. The watch also, for a while, I went through a stage of really loving domed crystal watches. This has a domed crystal, so past Michael would have probably actually really liked the crystal of this watch. We also have a signed crown, which is nice, raised indices on the dial. This one's like a slate gray, raised logo as well, which is always a plus for me. Automatic text on the bottom. With the date, I don't know if I said it already, this is a hacking Movement quick-set date, so super helpful, gonna be super easy to set the time and change the date, which is nice, and also expected on a modern day watch. But I mean, for the brand Movement, this is actually a pretty good watch. It's got a solid movement, nice case design, simple case design, it appeals to a mass audience, it's great. Now, for that price, it's $300. Do I think that's the best price for this watch? No, not at all. I don't think it's a good bargain at all. If you find it on sale or it's going for, I want to say $250 and below, okay, it's great. But then I would also suggest you check out the Timex Marlin. Beautiful, has an automatic movement, and is going for $250 normal price. The reason I had people comment, like I said, is that there's a lot more value for a $300 watch out there than this Movement watch. I personally would not buy it. I would get an Orient Bambino, cheaper. I think they're in-house. They are also tied in with Seiko, the beast and monster that is Seiko in the watch world, so I would probably go down that route. Okay, so now it's time to get into the more fun part of this video, and I want to transfer into this part of the video by telling 3 stories, maybe 2, depending on how long they take me to tell. The first story is, I was on a date with a girl. This is probably 2 years ago. I was super excited about the date. We sit down at dinner, we're chatting back and forth, and I notice she's rocking a Michael Kors watch on her wrist, and I'm like, oh cool, she likes watches, that's nice. I look down at her wrist, I see the watch, and I notice that it's not ticking, and I say, oh, your watch battery's dead, like she didn't know. And she goes, oh, actually it's not dead. I went swimming with the watch, and I just figured it would break, and it did. And that's like when a very basic idea popped into my head that I should have known before, and I was like, oh right, not everyone loves watches as much as I do, which leads into another story. I was at Sundance Film Festival watching a bunch of films. I was worried working on a feature film at the time, and I asked a guy to have a meeting with him and talk about my film and what he thought about it and stuff like that. Noticed he was wearing a Rolex Submariner, and I said, oh, I love the Rolex Submariner. That's one of my favorite watches. I want that to be my everyday watch. And he was like, oh yeah, cool, thanks man. Anyways, and as we're talking, I keep looking at the watch, and I noticed that it's a fake and it's ticking, and I was just like, oh no, this guy I thought was so cool, now I know he's wearing a fake watch. How do I feel about that? And really I was like, I can't freak out that this guy's wearing a fake watch, because it doesn't matter. This guy is also has a film in Sundance. I can't just be like, hey, never mind, screw you, you're why the watch industry is dying. The third instance of this is I had a friend in college that knew I loved watches, wore them all the time, and he got into watches by proxy. He was like, I really want to get a watch that I can wear and just rock. I showed him Seiko's, Hamilton's, Orient, I forget what other brands I showed him, but I was showing him everything. Vintage watches for this price, for that price. Then one day he sits down next to me while I'm eating and goes, I just bought 5 watches. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money that you spent. And he goes, no dude, I found this deal online where I could buy 1 watch for $10 and pick out 4 more. And he got the watches, he's super excited, opens them all up. There's chronographs that are just, it's literally just painted on dials. The buttons don't do anything, it's just like a lump in the case and stuff. He wore those watches every day, and he would pick out a watch for his outfit, and it would fit really well. It would look tacky to me. The watch looked like a piece of junk, but we'd go out and people would always be like, oh, I love your watch is beautiful. One time we're sitting in his room, a bunch of people are over, and some girl walks over to his watch and is like, oh my god, I love that watch. And it was a fake skeletonized watch, so you could see all the mechanics and stuff, but you actually can't see the mechanics. It's just a chunk of metal that looks like a watch moving. It doesn't move or anything because there's a cheap quartz moving under that. And the girl is like, oh my god, that is the prettiest watch I've ever seen, like, is just staring at it. And I'm sitting there and I have a solid gold Rolex Datejust on my wrist, and I'm just sitting there like, oh yeah, I love watches. Yeah, watches are a big passion of mine. And she's like, you should get one like that. And I was like, maybe one day. That's where this watch comes in. Movement, Daniel Wellington, Michael Kors, all these fashion watch companies decimate other companies. The biggest one I'm talking about is Seiko, one of the kings of the watch world. Seiko is such a big company, so important to the history of watches. They single-handedly killed so many watch brands. They just destroyed everybody. They're like, hey, this is a quartz movement, and also you're all out of business. And all the watch brands that like didn't follow suit were like, we're fine, and now we don't hear of them. And that's just how it goes, and that's why we have the oyster quartz, because Seiko was just like, but now we have Movement and Daniel Wellington just destroying them. And the reason is they are marketing how they should be marketing in 2018. They are just taking over social media. They're having celebrities wear their watches and partner with them. They're taking beautiful product shots and just designing for this modern day audience. And we look at other brands, I'm gonna just keep harping on Seiko. They make beautiful watches too, but you can't find them. And if you do find them, Seiko doesn't have a big, huge platform where they have celebrities wearing their watches or even just models showing off their beautiful watches. They have these renders that have poor lighting and just don't look like the best watch out there, which is when Seiko just rams themselves into a wall compared to these other brands. And the best example I have of that is the Robert Downey Jr. GQ interview where he's showing off his watch collection. He's showing off, obviously, Robert Downey Jr. watches, super expensive. Some people say they're fake, but still, super expensive, nice watches. And then he gets to his Nautilus and he says, my wife got me this as a present, and when I first looked at it, I said,
did you get me a Seiko? What is this? It's my birthday.
And that is the equivalent of the Seiko marketing team literally just falling on their face and just eating pavement and just dragging themselves across it. Because that's showing how Seiko markets their watches, and they're marketed as these cheap watches that are like scoffed upon by Robert Downey Jr., which I imagine he scoffs on a lot of watches, but still, it's a big deal to be scoffed on like that by such a public figure. But these Movement and Daniel Wellington watches are seen as like these toy, weird watches where it doesn't hit that category where Robert Downey Jr. wouldn't even say, what'd you get me, a Daniel Wellington watch? Because it's in a weird, different bracket where it's a very modern day, young type watch thing. So the customer that we find with these Movement watches are people that see these advertisements everywhere. They say, you know what, I want a watch. They go on movement.com, and what they do is they look at all the watches, they see this one, which I think is the most expensive, and also a highlighted watch, and they say, oh, okay, well, I can afford $300. Like, that's a lot of money, but for a watch, if it's the best watch that this brand offers, that's cool, I'll get it. And they don't look around, and I don't blame them for not looking around, because myself as a watch geek and a watch nerd, I am looking at watches all the time, and I still don't see a lot of Seiko Hamilton advertisements on anything. Even when I'm on YouTube, you know how they have those little advertisements to the right of watch brands and stuff? None for Seiko. There's never any. And that's how these older companies are just getting slapped around, and Christian talks about it all the time. They're not keeping up with the current form of marketing, which is social media and just trying to hit these younger audiences. They're just kind of resting on their laurels and saying, well, we're Seiko. What are you gonna do, not buy a Seiko? And they're turning into this like, oh, my grandpa got that watch at Macy's kind of thing, instead of being the powerhouse that they actually are. I mean, I had a Sarb forever. I have a few SKXs. I love those watches. But outside of the watch world, Movement is just pushing people around and throwing them around. I mean, they were acquired by Movado, who has one of my favorite watch designs ever, the museum dial. That dial was the first watch design to ever be inducted into the MoMA. And there's a lot of controversy behind that design because they say Movado stole it, or they didn't pay the designer that well, or something like that. There was a lot of battles going on, but it's beautiful. I mean, it's in the MoMA, and it was designed by basically that spot on the top of that museum dial is supposed to represent the sun, the most basic form of timekeeping. Anyways, back to the video. So all in all, we take marketing aside. Do I recommend this over a Seiko? No. Over a Hamilton? No. Over an Orient? No. But if you're looking for a watch, this is not a bad watch. And I saw another video a guy made on YouTube where he's talking about this watch, and he says there's no point in creating an automatic movement watch if you're not even gonna talk about the movement itself. But that's the point right there. The people that Movement is hitting aren't people that want to know necessarily what is going on inside. They don't want to know every little detail, how many jewels, what brand is it from, is it in-house. They just think it's cool that it's an automatic Movement watch for $300 from a brand that most people will recognize, that being Movement. Insane to me, but it's not that bad of a watch, in my honest opinion. You may think it's awful, I think it's a little overpriced, but if they knock that price down, you got a good watch on your hands. And at the end of the day, if someone gets into watches because they started out with a Movement Arc Automatic watch, really not a bad watch to get started on. Also, one day they may get into vintage watches. They may stumble across this channel. They may go on to theoandharris.com, look at their vintage watches, say, oh wow, I love this Rolex Datejust 1603. They'll buy it. Christian will stay in business. I'll still have a job editing, which means I'll make more videos for you guys. So at the end of the day, Movement is keeping Theo and Harris alive. I'm just kidding. Don't. Dear God, that probably is gonna get me a talking to. Anyways, that is the video. If you guys are thinking about subscribing, definitely do it on my video so it looks like I'm bringing a lot more traffic into the channel, because this is only my second video. But also toss us a like if you like this video, and if you're looking to buy a watch, vintage specifically, Omega, Rolex, Longines, Universal, Geneve, Cartier, I don't know what else, but check out theoandharris.com. They got some cool straps, they got some cool wallets, they got some pictures, bracelets, I don't know. All I know is that whatever they have, I usually get decked out in because I work for the company. So what are you gonna do? I will see you guys probably in 2 weeks where we jump into the history of some of my favorite watch brands. So I'm pretty pumped about that. But